GM Tom Fitzgerald just keeps pushing all the right buttons this offseason as once again the New Jersey Devils add depth to their lines. We break down the addition of Tomas Nosek, as the Devils look to become one of the deepest teams in the league ahead of the upcoming season. Let's dive in next. Yes, sir. It's the Devil's Puck Luck podcast, of course, where I am just one of your hosts, Adam Armbrecht, here covering the Brooklyn Nets over on the Locked On Nets podcast and the New York Football Giants on the One Giant podcast. A little bit of breaking news for everybody out there. We mentioned this. We're going to have actually a fresh episode coming up tomorrow, which talks about just the off-season updates, some of the young players, where the expectations are going for the New Jersey Devils. But just about an hour ago, Amanda Stein, of course, the only person that you would expect to be breaking the news for the New Jersey Devils, announced that GM Tom Fitzgerald added even more depth to the New Jersey Devils forward room as they went ahead and added Tomas Nosek, formerly of the Boston Bruins most recently, also of the Vegas Golden Knights, though prior to the big championship this past season. So what does it mean, right? Because we'll talk about this going into next week. The only difference that's going to change here in terms of the discussion we have on tomorrow's episode, which was recorded about an hour ago today, is just where kind of some of these young players are looking right now inside of the Devils organization, and whether or not we think that the Devils are making room for some of the youth potentially. There's certain guys, as we obviously know, when we think about the defensive room, and Luke Hughes has already made his debut, and then all the key figures that have been a part of the starting rotations over these past season or more that are just expected now to elevate their game and to continue to expand what their roles are going to be going forward. But we talk about a player like Nosek, played with Boston last year, 66 games, came up with 7 goals, 11 assists, 18 points overall, a 9 plus minus. And there really is only one key stat here that I think is really noteworthy as we look over what he brings into this room here for the New Jersey Devils. A veteran player, came into the league with Detroit back in 2015-16. Really has been a guy starting in 17-18, has played consistently throughout the NHL, right? Some of the additions we've talked about, like Miller going back a couple of weeks for the Devils, you look at what they've done over the course of their career and you say, hey, this is a very nice depth piece, as is Nosek. But remember, starting in 2017-18 with the Vegas Knights, where he played 4 seasons, 67, 68, 67, and then 38 starts that last year, 38 games, that last season in 2020, 2021, which is where it starts to tail off. But then he jumps over with the Boston Bruins, and he's going to play 75 and 66 games, respectively, over the past 2 seasons. This guy has been around, right? He has been around and played a role on a lot of teams over the last handful of seasons. So from an experience standpoint, 398 games played, 42 goals, 59 assists. Again, when we think about it in the landscape of the top lines for the New Jersey Devils, no, we're not sitting here telling you that he's going to be cracking into the rotation with a significant role per se. But here's what you like about it. And it actually goes right over to what Amanda Stein mentioned in this post earlier today over on Twitter. New Jersey Devils bottom 6 depth just keeps getting stronger with the addition of Tomas Nosek. As Fitzy, her words, not mine. I'm always going to call him Tom Fitzgerald because I don't know him personally. Amanda Stein has that relationship built in. Said he doesn't want to be the best top 6 line in the league. He wants to be the best top 9. So we talk about those line combinations. Obviously, this offseason, the Devils not only brought back Timo Meier, which was the expectation, we also saw them bring in Tyler Toffoli, who, at least in this moment, we project to be in that second line. So we're talking about, and these combinations can be fluid, but Meier, Hischier, and Mercer. Then we've got Brad, Hughes, and Toffoli. Then you get down into that third line territory. We mentioned about Holtz this offseason as well. We've talked about going all the way down to the fourth line with McLeod, with Bastian, with Lazar. What's going to happen there, certainly. And, the speculation about how they're going to fill that out there. But bringing in a player like Nosek at least tells you that that depth piece is there. And it's funny. I would say that Danny and I, when we've talked about this team and the moves that they've been making, we keep putting it through the prism of, listen, they overachieved a little bit. They got themselves ahead of schedule this past year, and that's great. But don't lose the plot of what you're doing in the big picture, right? Remember that you want to develop guys. And we're going to touch on that a little bit more at length tomorrow, which I think is important. However, you got to start to make the case that with all these moves in this offseason, and we all know the overarching question is about the goaltending and whether or not the Devils should stand pat with Vitek and with Akira, right? And Danny and I actually talked about that on our previous episode. You can see us discuss at length what we think is going to happen, how the season is going to start between the pipes. But we've also discussed how what this team needed to do, if you just took a big step back from this past year and having success and winning a playoff series and beating the Rangers, was shore up positional depth so that when you get into the season and you feel like some of the young players maybe have some of those growing pains, when you don't want to see those kind of pendulum swinging stretches where the Devils did lose. They went on some lengthy losing streaks. They also went on phenomenal winning streaks, right? But you want consistency game over game. That's what all these offseason moves speak to me. There's some guys that you knew you were going to lose. Some guys like Miles Wood that we're going to go get, as Danny would say. Wow, impressive money out there on the market. But the Devils and Fitzgerald needed to be smart and needed to be practical about filling out the roster while rewarding and retaining all of the key players that you want to be a part of this going forward. A player like Nosek just does exactly that. It eliminates the question mark about consistency and reliability. I think that you want, and I know I want at least, I want the young players, right? However, based on the way they've executed this offseason, the Devils see this window as very much not just being open over the next few years, which that was the expectation, but more even maybe that they've got a foot through the window now. And now they're trying to get both legs through the window. They're trying to plant their feet on the floor. They're trying to pull themselves through that window and cement what this upcoming season specifically, not beyond the season, this season, cemented as being deep playoff run, high expectations around what they want to achieve. Does that mean that if they don't make the Stanley Cup Finals this year, it was a disappointment? No. However, it's going to look starkly different than saying making the playoffs after the season they had was incredible. Beating the Rangers was incredible. This is now we need to get beyond the second round of the playoffs. That is the picture they're painting here. And this one signing unto itself is not what moves that needle. However, in totality, this offseason is really starting to drive that direction. And I think Danny would agree with me, and we'll discuss this in the coming days, that we have to start to shift the perspective a little bit here, right? We've been cautiously optimistic, still wanting to stay the course, not lose the plot about what the long-term stability is that you want to maintain with this organization. But they keep doing all these little moves, all these wins in the margin on these signings tell you you're going that way. Reminder here, because this is a brief, quick update. Tomas Nosek brought in to the New Jersey Devils, just adding more depth to this room. He is, of course, a veteran, experienced player with Boston, with Vegas, with Detroit to start his career in 2015-16. He represents a guy that is not going to blow you away on the stat sheets. But remember, with some of the guys that are going out for the Devils right now, adding in a guy that has never been a double-digit goal scorer, and that's okay, but a guy that's giving you, 20-ish points, right? 20-ish points on the year with what he's able to play. He's only 101 point total in his entire career, but 42 goals, 59 assists, consistency. By the way, I'm going to touch on this note here real quick, as this is a tight episode that we're running with the update. Be sure to check out the full episode coming tomorrow, and we'll continue to flesh out what the Devils have done here all off season long. I will just say, Benjamin Maple, thank you for joining in on the live stream on YouTube. Tatar would still be nice. Yes, he would. And again, if we're reading everything that the Devils are doing here, this would still speak to the idea that you want Tatar back. You want him in this room. You want him to bring exactly what you saw this past season, more stability, more depth to this roster, where again, it's just about, hey, who's earning the spot? Who's earning the minutes? What about injury coverage? What about a guy that goes into a slump? The Devils want to safeguard against any of those lulls that they saw this past season, whether it's youth developing or injuries or potentially veterans that don't fully come through, right? Sometimes it is about taking a volume approach to making sure that you have all of the consistency on a game-to-game basis that you want. So I 100% agree with you, though. Tomas Tatar getting back in this room, back into this locker room would certainly be a big add. Last point that I'm going to bring up to you about the newest signing, Tomas Nosek, is face-off percentage. Oh, baby. Why? Because this past season with Boston, 59%. The year prior, 54. 51 and 50 going back. And to start his career, he was actually a 54 of the first two seasons. With didn't play much the first year with Detroit. I should just be clarifying that here. Second season where he did play 11 games for Detroit, 54% on the faceoff, 54 with his first year with Vegas, 62 when he took on that role in 2019 for Vegas as well. We've talked about this before, a career 55% faceoff winner. The Devils did that as well. This is to fully higher expectations for him. But again, he's a guy that comes in with a great face-off win percentage to go along with all of his skill sets. The Devils want to be an offensive team that when called upon, the guys that step onto the ice are going to win those face-offs, control the zone, keep the pressure on the defense, wear them down, get tired legs, space out that ice, and allow some of their quickness, some of their speed, and some of their sharpshooters, obviously, like Jack Hughes first and foremost, to really be able to punish opposing defenses because you can maintain and control that puck in that final zone. Just another great ad, right? That's all it comes down to. Again, we're going to get out the door here. Reminder, you can follow us on YouTube, as you're probably watching right now, at Devils Puck Luck. You get over to Twitter. You follow us at NJ Devils PL. You follow at Danny the Face for, wouldn't you know it, Danny McDonough. Myself at Adam Armbrecht. Also over on Instagram at Devils Puck Luck. And I think we've got another new social media platform coming into the fold here shortly. Danny will tell you about that. So we're doing it, man, all off season long. We're going to tell you tomorrow, and I'll say it here again. We also have some exciting news coming up starting at the beginning of next week that we're really looking forward to telling everybody about as we continue to build our coverage around the Devils. That's the goal. That's the agenda, and includes moments like this. When news breaks, we try to come in as quickly as possible, give you the perspective, and then remind you. We'll continue to flesh this out. And it's always good when Danny and I get together because we get to bat around how this impacts the roster, where we think players like this fit in, and what it means for this upcoming season. It is certainly now, as we work our way through this offseason, pushing me further and further in the direction of Fitzgerald just keeps shoring up areas of this roster. And now we need to start to really change that mentality about expectations. So follow us for all that great coverage. We thank every person that came in here for this impromptu live. We'll be back again tomorrow with a full episode talking about youth, talking about the Prospects Challenge up in Buffalo the Devils are taking part of as well. So be sure to come in there for that as well. And we even, Danny and I even get into some ways to improve the NHL, ways to expand the brand. So be sure to be a part of that one as well. And on your podcast feeds, wherever you get that too. Thank you so much for checking in with us. We will continue to break down all things New Jersey Devils right here on the Devils Puck Luck Podcast.